I'm Susan. You are at TechSoup. For those of you that don't know, TechSoup is a nonprofit technology organization. We are a nonprofit. We help nonprofits get the technology that they need. As you can see from the wall behind you, we've been around for 25 years under certain different names and brands, but basically essentially doing the same thing, which is getting software and technology solutions into the hands of nonprofits. This is the online community Meetup. This is a program of TechSoup. I used to be the director of the online community and social media team, and I am now doing community and social media partnerships with our new division, which is called Caravan Studios. And I need to add that to that butcher paper. At Caravan Studios, along with all of those Twitter handles, are the ones that you should be following. If you are live tweeting, this is the hashtag that you would be using, which is OCTribe, because you are all a part of the online community tribe. I am Suzboop, S-U-Z-B-O-O-P, at TechSoup, and Caravan Studios is just like it sounds. Before we get started with, and it's not Mark Siegel either, it's Marc Smith.
I'm up at the top.
Oh, okay. Marc Siegel is just one of our volunteers. Yes, these are our volunteers. I'm sorry. These are all of our volunteers. Marc Siegel, Susan Chavez, who's right there, that girl Crystal, who's that girl Crystal, and Ravi, who is at the front door, who let you in, and Time Doctor, who is Zach, who's right there. These are all our wonderful volunteers. May 21st, we are having an unconference, an online community unconference. We haven't had one in about 5 years. They are incredibly fun, interesting, and engaging, and some of the best online community veterans in the area attend them, and we are running it, all of us together. And the fact that it's an unconference means that there are no planned speakers. The audience are the speakers, and you just come up and say what you want to talk about. Really cool. Kalia, who is at Identity Woman on Twitter, is the one who is helping facilitate it, and she is at unconference.net. So she is actually one of the people who is the founders of unconferences. It's going to be a great event. So you can learn more about that at ocu.chirpy, CHIRPY.com. 2 R's? Yeah, C-H-I-R, I thought that was a typo, CHIRRPY.com, ocu.chirpy with 2 R's.com, unconference, OCTribe, follow this hashtag always, put it in your tweet deck, put it in your Hootsuite. Marc Smith is here today talking from the Social Media Research Foundation, is going to be talking about mapping your social network. So about NodeXL, we have a very live and vibrant, active Twitter stream here. And that's Salvador, who's another wonderful tech volunteer and TechSoup employee. What else do I need to say? I think I hit all the salient points. If you want to talk on the phone, you can go into one of those rooms and close the door, but don't obviously talk on the phone in here. The lights might go out, and then I'll have to run and turn it back on. It's just the way it works here. They're on a timer after a certain hour. Help yourself to food and booze. Follow at Caravan Studios. I guess I'll tell you more about at Caravan Studios very quickly. We are the new division of TechSoup that focuses on apps for nonprofits. Hashtags that we are kind of tweeting on are open data, hackathons, and apps. We're working on building apps for nonprofits and running apps for social benefit orgs. And we're doing that through a variety of ways, working with corporate donor, kind of TechSoup corporate donors like Microsoft, Cisco, Symantec, Adobe, and their corporate CSR volunteering efforts to build those apps. We're also going into hackathons and getting the code that comes out of hackathons and turning those into apps for nonprofits. We'll be running our own hackathon at the beginning of May. So all of that will be on the meetup.com/OCTribe email list. So I assume that you all are a member of the Meetup, and if you have not yet signed up, you should, because you'll learn about all of these exciting things. And one last bit of information is that Michael DeLong right there, who is Michael DeLong, what's MM DeLong, MM DeLong is his new Twitter handle. He will be presenting on this very topic at the Nonprofit Technology Conference, which is happening April 10th through the 13th in Minneapolis, and you can follow it virtually if you aren't already going. Just go to n10.org, nten.org/NTC for Nonprofit Technology Conference. That's all I'm going to talk about right now. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Marc Smith, who will be talking about mapping your social network, and then we'll pass around the mic and answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Suze, thank you. Hi, folks, and hi in Internet land. I'm Marc Smith. I am a sociologist, and well, I'm really into that Internet thing. Social media, you need a sociologist if you're interested in the study of social media, and that's what sociologists are. Sociology has some assets. It has some ideas, it has some techniques, it has some methods, there are some tools that help bring the very confusing land of social media into focus. There's a lot of liking and linking and replying and rating and reviewing and friending and following and forwarding and maybe even some sending going on out there. And it can be confusing. It's hard to really know what your social media landscape looks like and how it compares to others and how it's changing over time. So I come from an organization called the Social Media Research Foundation. We are a California 501c3 not-for-profit. Our motto is, maybe I should go back here, there's the motto, open tools, open data, and open scholarship. We think that social media is really important, but the tools for doing social media and the tools for understanding social media are not well developed, and they are also proprietary. And yet we as a culture now live out our civic lives as much, if not more, online than in any plaza, city square, or public place. And so that's where public happens. It happens in hashtags, it happens in Facebook groups. And yet those places are not public spaces. Those are shopping malls. And so sadly, I will have to say I have become a social scientist of shopping malls. I'm studying places where I have no real right to be there. We don't have a right to be on Facebook or Twitter or any of these services. And so we also don't really have a right to understand them. We have a contractual ability to get some data from them. And so this is going to be an issue, and I'll leave you with a larger point that says we need to build real city squares for us to have our cyber lives in, because right now this is already starting to fray at the edges where we do all of our living and our civic engagement in contractual spaces rather than citizen spaces. So with that in mind, it's still the case that we all want to know what is going on in Twitter, in Flickr, in Facebook, in YouTube, on the web itself, in blogs, in message boards, in email lists. This is where I spend a lot of my time. Maybe you spend a lot of your time there as well. And so what we're trying to do is look at all of these different kinds of places where people put stuff, and we're trying to understand the space better. And we achieve that understanding with a combination of social theory and tools. The social theories are tools, are ideas like social network analysis. That's a sociological concept, SNA, social network analysis. But also other concepts like collective action dilemma theory, which is the area of study that asks the question, why can't we all just get along? And the answer is, we have lots of reasons why we can't get along. We might not agree. We might not have the same priorities. We don't share the same information. We don't agree. And so getting a group of people to do anything collectively is hard. It's also hard to do that online. And yet, online is where it seems to happen a lot. Encyclopedias get written. Message boards get filled up with good questions and answers. So this collective action thing seems to happen a lot. So our goal, and who's our? Well, we are a group now in 14, I think maybe 15 time zones. These are computer scientists, social scientists, information scientists, software developers, and we've gotten together to try to steal fire from the gods and give it to the mortals. If you are a PhD computer scientist, raise your hand. No, me neither. If you are a PhD computer scientist, you could probably do all of the following tasks without a problem. You're going to open a socket to an API and do a query, get the results and store it in a database, then iterate over the database, calling data out, performing operations on it, store that result back in the database, and then build a web interface that allows you to interact with that database, delivering data to the canvas. Everybody ready to do that? Anybody here? You. Can I have your card? Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Hello, Twitter people. I'll talk louder. So, we are building a tool that's a lot like desktop publishing was if you were a typesetter, in that we're taking a lot of the knowledge that a PhD computer scientist has about doing all of those things, calculating centrality scores, pulling data in, pushing data out, and we're turning it into a tool that's a lot more like making a pie chart. In fact, if you can make a pie chart, you can now make a network diagram. And many of the fine, smiling people here have made contributions to this. So social media is all about relationships, right? It's all about, I sent you something, you sent something to me, I liked it, I linked to it, I rated it, I reviewed it. Every one of these things causes a tie, a connection. In network theory, we call them edges. And the things we call vertices. So vertices are tied to each other by edges. It's the mathematical lingo. So if everybody's passing these things around, and we have the added feature that when you do this in a online environment, not only do you leave footprints in the sand, but you can data mine the footprints. Oh, and there is no tide, right? Until Google actually gets wiped off the face of the planet, a lot of these footprints are just never going away. And so there are patterns that are left behind, and we are now in a position to collect the patterns and analyze the patterns. We can look at the aggregate of all the types of ties that are out there, and there are lots of different kinds of ties. These are the internet verbs, if you will. I think I have to add the word send, but if you know of others, let me know. I'll amend the list. But when you do these things, and isn't this what we do pretty much all day? We're constantly liking and linking and replying and rating and doing these things, and when you do that, you form a connection, a tie. And network theory is all about what happens when you have a few hundred or a few thousand or a few million of these. You have simple statements that say A has a relationship with B. A gives B a ride to the airport. A is married to B. A has lent B money. A has replied to B. A has retweeted B. A has liked or linked, and all those verbs again with B. And so the key insight of network theory is that we are not individuals. It's not a very popular idea here in this country, but I am a social scientist. That's sort of like a socialist. So you can understand where this is coming from. But social scientists say you're not really an individual. You are embedded in all these relationships. And you know, the saying is it's not about know-how. It's about turning the lights back on. Yeah, it happens. It's not about know-how, it's about know-who. And know-who is sometimes also referred to as social capital. It's the power to connect to other people. And so if you look out on the internet, you'll see that pretty much all of the variety of services out there all allow users to author an edge, a tie, a link, a way of forming a connection between you and some other person, or indirectly to their artifact and thus to them. So maybe you like their picture and not them, but the picture is from somebody, so you have an indirect tie to them. So network theory is all about how do we mathematically understand this pile of connections, this collection of connections. And to be honest, the math gets deep. And you know, I'm a social scientist. If I could be a mathematician, I would have been a computer scientist. So I don't really, you know, I'm not ready to explain the math, but in a lot of ways, you know, your browser's doing math all day, and we don't understand that either. The goal is to give you the results of the math and to give you really the takeaway insights of what network theory can tell you. What can network theory really say about Flickr or Twitter or YouTube? It tells you something that's very similar to what real estate used to say were the three most important things. Remember when real estate was cool? Maybe getting cool again, or hot, as the case may be. Real estate, they used to say, you know, you need a good foundation, good schools, and no. There were three important things in real estate, and those were location, location, location. right? It was all about location. If I tell you I have a 950 square foot tear down, how much is it worth? Your question is it in Palo Alto? In that case, it's a $1.5 million building. Is it somewhere else? It could be worth nothing. So location, location, location. In network theory, we don't quite have location, 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 in part because there is no north, there is no south, there is no east and west. But what we do have is position, position, position. It's all about the relative position of people to other people or entities to other entities. And some people are in the center. And some people are at the edge. They're at the periphery. And that's a key concept in network theory. Who's in the middle and who's at the edge? So, for example, these people are peripheral. They have no connections. And these people are quite central. They're at the middle of a cluster. Another concept here is neighborhood. That's a cluster. That's a cluster. These are people who are more tied to each other than they are to these people. These people are densely tied to themselves, but not to those people. And so cluster is a very important concept. So the ties. We've been in the social network world for some time now, and I think we've all heard the critique, those are not really your friends, right? I've got 800 people on my Facebook list. How many of them do I not only not know their name, but cannot tell you how I met them, if I met them? Yeah, maybe, yeah, a significant number of them. And a lot of people have dismissed social networking as a result. Well, those are not really important people, and it's true. These people are not your strong ties. That's supposed to be like an iron chain. Strong ties, the number of strong ties you have in your life has not dramatically changed because of the internet. Sociologists find that you have 8 to 10 to 12 people that you would invite to a holiday dinner where you would put the tie back, or the leaf back into the table. That's how many people you know well enough to feel like, you know, there's a tie there. And the rest of your connections are what we call weak ties. They're not strong ties. They're not the people who will visit you in the hospital. They're not going to take you to the airport. They're not going to lend you money. But they are the people you meet at conferences occasionally. And guess what? The very famous sociologist Marc Granovetter, who is at Stanford in 1972, wrote what is perhaps the most cited paper in the social sciences, titled The Strength of Weak Ties. Granovetter wanted to know back in the early 70s, how do you get a job? And he thought, well, must be obvious. The people you know really well, your strong ties, they tell you about new work opportunities. And then he did what social scientists do, research. And he found out, wrong, not true. The people you know really, really, really well, they know all the people you know. And you know what? They don't have news for you. They don't know about stuff that's happening in another city because they live near you. And so their experience and your experience very similar. There's not a lot of new news. You go to a conference, you go to Minneapolis for that conference, and you meet somebody who you've met before but only occasionally, and guess what? They've got news. And that news might include, you know, we're hiring? And if so, please send us mail. But so this idea that the weak tie has strength, at least in aggregate, is an important concept. So network theory has been around for a long time. You could say that the mathematician Euler back in the 1700s came up with network theory in a mathematical problem known as the Bridges of Königsberg problem, in which 7 bridges, 2 islands, and 2 river banks have to be walked through only once, and the answer is you can't do it. Why do we care? Because it actually spawned an area of mathematics called topology. And topology then went through 300 years of development and landed in the laps of a Romanian sociologist named Jacob Moreno, who migrated to New York, worked at NYU, and he came up with this, the first ever hand-drawn social network diagram. The triangles are people on an American football team, and the arrows, the lines, are who likes or dislikes other people on the team. And you can start to make some interesting insights, like who's the most liked, who's the most unliked, who's the least liked, who's got the least connections, the most connections, and whose connections, if you were to remove them, would most disconnect the rest of the graph, leave it in 2 parts. That's called centrality. We'll talk about that. This then migrated through the social sciences. Here it's being applied to work groups at the Western Electric Wiring Room in Illinois. And so networks have become a really important concept, but when you do it by hand, the number of nodes you can involve is, you know, 12, 2 dozen. And now we're looking at the internet. And the internet, of course, has, well, there's 2.5 billion humans on the internet. There are several trillion pieces of content on the internet, and we connect to each other in millions, if not billions, of ways. So here we are. We're the Social Media Research Foundation. We're trying to make it so that you can do network theory and network analysis of your stuff without becoming either a computer scientist or a sociologist. Although we will argue that if you use the tool long enough, you automatically become a sociologist. You start to think like a sociologist. So we built a tool, and the tool is called NodeXL, the Network Overview, Discovery, and Exploration add-in for Excel. We were advised to be an acronym. Apparently, they can't be trademarked. So NODE, the Network Overview, Discovery, and Exploration add-in for Excel. And we do these 5 things. And we do them automatically, and we do them for you. And I'll explain them, but I'm going to make the argument, you really want to do these 5 things. These are the things you'd want to do if you want to do something with a network. You'd want to get a network. You need to put it somewhere. You need to sort of grind it and visualize it in some way. And then you'd like to share it. You'd like to give it to somebody. And so we've made it really easy to get a network. You know, this is a network society, or at least when I came through the door on the label, it said network society. We live in an internet society. Networks are everywhere. And yet, I'd ask you this. Where would you get one? What would you put it in? What would you do with it once you got it? And who would you share it with? How would you share it? And those are hard questions if you're not a programmer. If you're a programmer, you're going, oh, well, you know, I'd open a socket. I'd query the API. I'd load that into a database. I would do some transformations of it. I would deliver it to a web page. If you, like me, don't do those things, then you need us. We do that for you. We make it so that it's pretty easy to go to this menu and say, I'd like a hashtag map. I'd like a Facebook group map. I'd like a Wikipedia map. I'd like an email map. All of those systems have a network, and it's the one thing that actually is the thing that unifies them. The one data structure to bind them all is the network. It's really the universal data structure. And so you can go in there and say, yeah, I'll take a Twitter search, and I'll take that result. I'll put it somewhere. Where do I put it? I put it, in this case, it goes into Excel. We abuse Excel and turn it into this. We turn NodeXL into a network browser. And now you've got a network display pane over there. You've got this spreadsheet. These are the people. These are their networks. These are all their network attributes. And then down that way, we even have data from, let's say, the source of it. Like Twitter will tell us how many followers you have or what time zone you told it you were in. And we'll put all that into a spreadsheet. And so then you want to analyze it, and things get tricky. I mean, there's a lot of math here, but we've made that invisible to you. You pick. We've put into the package most of the metrics that network people have agreed are the ones that we really use. About 80% of the metrics that are in the largest amount of use. Things like, how many connections does this entity have? That's their degree. And how many of those connections start with somebody else and land here rather than start here and go to somebody else? That's the in versus the out degree. How many connections do you have that are to other people versus the number of people who have connections to you? There are other metrics here, like how between are you? This is a notion called centrality. There's several centrality scores. There's eigenvector centrality. I will argue that in San Francisco or on the peninsula, if you can be overheard in conversation saying the word eigenvector centrality, a venture capitalist will jump out and hand you a check. Try it. Let me know if it works, but I think it works. Anywhere in the peninsula, if you say eigenvector centrality, you will be funded on the spot. There you go. Yeah. So we're going to calculate all those metrics for you, and we'll try to explain them to you, but you know, maybe the first thing to do is make the metrics and then look at them and see if you can start to get an intuition about what does that number mean, and I'll explain some of those. And then you're going to want to draw a picture. A spreadsheet is great, but really what you want is the picture of the graph. Because once you learn to interpret the picture of the graph, and admittedly, you know, your first view of this may not be interpretable. But after a while, you're going to say, well, look at how many of these isolates there are. And look at how big the groups are. And look at how disconnected they are. And I'll show you a picture in a few seconds that show you 6 very, very different patterns. And then you'll start to say, oh, well, wait a second. There are, of course, 4 questions that you then have to ask. What's my group look like? what does the group that I wish I was like look like, my aspirational target? What's the difference between my group and that target group? And based on having intervened in some way, marketing, an effort, an event, outreach, tweeting, how close did I get? Am I approaching that goal? So we have made it easy then to share your results. We've made publication a part of the project. And so when you are ready and you've gotten data, you've analyzed data, you've mushed around on your desktop, and now it's good, and you think it tells a story, and you want to share that story, we have a publication mechanism, and you export to this website. It's called NodeXLGraphGallery.org. It's on the web, and it's Flickr for networks. People use the tool, and they upload graphs that matter to them. And hopefully, if you go and take a look at NodeXL Graph Gallery, you'll see some graphs in there that are of interest to you. There's a search box you may be able to find. You'll find, for example, many OCTribe maps. You'll find many NP Tech maps, and we'll actually make one of these maps in a couple of seconds. And when we look at these maps, what we're going to learn is something about the shape of the crowd, about the leaders in that crowd, about whether or not it's a public or an in-group topic. So these are the kinds of things you'll learn. Who is the mayor of your hashtag? What are the main divisions, if any, that are present in that population? I'll show you some very polarized hashtags where there are clearly two groups of people who are talking about the same thing, and they're not talking to each other. They're talking about each other. They're not talking to each other. So these are the three things. You're going to find out who are the key influencers, what are the subgroups, and how are those groups bridged, if at all. And so to give you sort of a visual representation, you are looking for these kinds of shapes. You're looking for the hub, which is in some ways the easiest and most obvious entity in the graph, the person with the most connections. They're the hub. But let me ask you this. In what way could someone have only 2 connections and have those connections be more valuable than someone with 200 connections? I'll let that sink in a moment. And the answer, of course, is
that their connections are more influential. They have their connections have more fun.
they're unique connections. There's our bridge. You know how hard it is to get to Napa without that bridge? Really hard. You'd have to go to Oakland. It's another 100 and something miles if you take away the bridge. And so who in your organization or in your graph plays this role? Where if you were to remove that connection, maybe 2 groups that were bridged are no longer bridged. There's nobody who knows somebody in accounting from sales. There's nobody in marketing who knows anybody in engineering, at which point you have 2 separate groups. So looking for the bridge, those are important people. They may not seem that important. They're not the hub. They don't have hundreds of connections. Maybe they are the only person in sales who knows somebody in marketing, and that makes them a bridge. The other shape to look for is the island. A lot of people ignore the island. They say, well, how could someone with 0 connections be influential? I'll note that anybody who casually mentions your brand and is not yet connected to all the other people who regularly talk about your brand, isn't that the highest value new target for customer acquisition you've ever been served on a silver platter? This person has said, casual mention of your brand. Wow. Islands are very important. Islands are very important. If you are a brand and you have no islands in your graph, then you're not a brand. And admittedly, perversely, what do you want to do with an island? You want to build a bridge to it. But you need new islands to show up so that there are people to build bridges to. So there's a kind of perverse quality there. But islands are really important. And then clusters. People don't actually line up in rows. They clump. People are clumpy. And when they clump, and so here, this is a picture of Occupy Wall Street from a week ago. No, actually, this is Occupy Union Square from 100 years ago. It's 1913. And they're protesting in Union Square. And why are they protesting in Union Square? They're protesting for the right to unionize. And why are they doing it in Union Square? Just coincidence. It wasn't that kind of union. Union Square in New York is the yay, we did not lose the Civil War union, not the yes, you have labor rights Union Square. And so they're protesting for labor rights. And my argument here is that when you stood under one of the signs, what you were saying is, I'm the kind of guy who could read this sign. And it's not in English. It's in Italian, it's in Yiddish, it's in German, it's also in English. So, there's a lot of diversity in New York. There are clumps. So when we look at social media, what we're really seeing are crowds, and what we're really seeing are deeply abused crowds. The interface abuses the data. Mr. Obama can look at his crowd and he can actually get some insight. It's a big crowd, it's a happy crowd, it's a divided crowd. They're waving signs. And yet that is the tweet stream of people mentioning Obama. Where's the crowd? Well, the answer is the crowd is there. It's latent. It's in the data. It's A follows B, A replied to B, and when you look at it, it looks like that. And that's people saying the word debate and Obama from, I guess this is September or October. And what we can see is the people who are for him and the people who are against him. And there's some very interesting patterns there in terms of how the left and the right connect to each other differently. So the right, for example, is much more densely interconnected to itself. And the left, of course, I'm probably in the right audience. The problem with the left is that we tolerate diversity. And so there's a lot of openness on the left, and there's a lot of density on the right, because everybody on the right is very well connected to everybody else on the right, and have almost no bridges to the left. The left, admittedly, not very well bridged to the right, but also very diverse. A lot of hubs with a lot of spokes, a lot of people standing up and saying, I'm going to be your news source, and people connecting to them, not the kind of closed, dense groups. So here, for example, is people talking about GOP. Two groups, the red and the blue. Very little connection between them. So in order to illustrate what are the different kinds of graphs out there, one of the helpful things to do is to look at 6 very different kinds of graphs. And then you can ask this question, what's my graph look like? Which of these 6 do I most look like? So for example, this is polarized. This is people talking about politics. In this case, they're talking about the hashtag #My2K. The President of the United States of America encourages people to tweet. President says, tweet the hashtag #My2K, representing the $2,000 your household will end up losing if, at the time it was the fiscal cliff, was not resolved. And of course, the reality is we actually didn't resolve that. We all are now paying $2,000 extra. But okay, the hashtag was put out there, and these are the people who disagree with the president, and these are the people who agree with the president. And you know what? There's almost no connection between them. This is polarized. This is what it looks like when we disagree. And interestingly, disagree and don't talk to each other about it, right? This is not, hey, we're yelling at each other. You person on the other side of the political spectrum, bad person. No, this is, let's talk about the people on the other side of the political spectrum to each other. Those people are terrible, I'm telling you. But we're not actually going to talk to them. So polarized, big division between the two. This is cManager chat. What is cManager chat? That's right. The chat for community managers. In our lingo, it's an in-group. Notice that it does not have a big division. There are subgroups, but they're pretty well bridged. There is not a clear divide. And you see these guys? These are the isolates. They're sort of the casual mentioners of #My2K. People could say it without being part of the group. No one is able to say community manager chat without already being part of the usual suspects. If you know the word community manager chat, you know someone else who knows the word community manager chat. And so that's an in-group, no isolates. This is the opposite of that opposite. This is a brand. Brands have isolates. Brands are things like, how many people here saw Toy Story? Okay. What does that predict about our relationship? Nothing. So a lot like saying, anybody here respirate? Air? Me too. Love air. Never go a day without it. So there's not a lot of predictive power there, but this is the map of the word Lumia. That's a brand trying to be a brand. And Lumia, it has a lot of these people who mention Lumia, but they're not talking to each other about it, versus this. This is the Nokia cluster, and that's the Microsoft cluster. So those are the industry groups talking to each other about Lumia, different from a brand that is just talking, hey, I just got a Lumia. And then the appropriate reply. I'm so sorry. See? What is a Lumia? It's the Microsoft Nokia phone.
I thought it was a toy kit.
Oh, yeah, no, maybe. Yeah. This is what we call a bazaar. Bazaar is when you are such a big topic that mass media around the planet's covering you. This is the map of the hashtag FLOTUS. So that's First Lady of the United States of America. FLOTUS gets lots of media outlets. They're all getting their own audience, and yet she is also a brand. People could say FLOTUS without actually knowing another person who's saying FLOTUS. So sort of like a brand, a bazaar has lots of little providers. So sort of flea market is the vision there. This is broadcast. That is Paul Krugman. He just tweeted about an article he wrote in the New York Times. This cluster here is the audience cluster. These are people who retweet Krugman but don't connect to each other. And so that's a hub and spokes, but the spokes don't connect. These are the community clusters. These people talk to each other about Paul Krugman. And so here the arrows are going inbound. These people retweet him, and here they're connecting to each other. These are the communities. This is the inverse of this. This is support. That is the Virgin America account at the center of that hub. And instead of being replied to by, which is what happens to Krugman, he posts and then all these people retweet him. Here, the Virgin America account is replying to all those people. So the arrows are starting at the center and going out rather than starting on the outside and coming in. So it's the inverse. And the support cluster is, hey, you know, there's a brand account sitting on the Virgin America Twitter account saying, you know, your flight's been canceled, you should go here, your bag's been lost, you should go here, you know, all the routine rigmarole of keeping travelers on the move, that's happening here. And then these are the industry clusters. These are people talking about the airline and will it ever be profitable, which we'd like because they're in Burlingame. We need the local employment. And this proves that they're a brand. Lots of people say Virgin America without talking to each other about it. So I'll just give you a close-up of each of those. There's My2K. This is the polarized map. Here's CManager chat. This is the in-group map. This is Lumia. We're looking at a brand. Lots of disconnected people in a brand. This is Bazaar. It's FLOTUS. It's a topic that gets a lot of people talking about it, but each of them get their own little audience. This is New York Times, so Paul Krugman, there's Mr. Krugman. This is his audience. These are his communities. And then this is actually a different one, but this is Dell Listens, Dell Cares. So there's the support hub replying to all of these people rather than them replying to it. In this case, the green lines are follows and the blue lines are I replied or mentioned you. So you have different kinds of edges. So different kinds of topics out there have different shapes. In New Scientist in 2011, we ran a blog post. He compared what Tea Party looked like to Occupy Wall Street. And it looked really different. For example, the fraction of isolates in Tea Party was 4% of the population were disconnected from all others. In Occupy, it was 23%, an almost 400-time increase, or fourfold increase in the number of isolates. Which one is more like a brand? Occupy Wall Street. Now, this was 2011, and I do these maps every day, and I have more recent stuff, but this was the publication. So, yeah, you know, if you were going to predict which one is more like a social movement, what do social movements have to be in order to be a social movement? Well, they need these people. A social movement that is not growing is dying. Okay. So there's some interesting insights to be had by looking at various political topics and looking at them from this perspective. If you go to Graph Gallery, you'll see maps of things like Keystone XL or climate change or global warming. And typically you will see this cluster or a cluster for each of the various positions people will occupy on that topic. In some cases, the graph comes pre-filtered. I'll give you an example. If you ever tweeted the hashtag ACA, then you agreed with it. ACA, the Affordable Care Act, hard to disagree with Affordable Care. I'd like the Expensive and Inaccessible Care Act, please. Oh, we have one already. So the Affordable Care Act, if you tweet ACA, you agree. If you tweet Obamacare, 2/3 of you deeply dislike it. Only about a third of the tweet population that says the word Obamacare are for it, 2/3 against. 100% of the ACA mentioning population, however, are for it. And so some topics come pre-polarized, pre-filtered, versus other topics, let's say like tax cut, or for that matter, Keystone XL, where you'll see there's, well, there's Mother Jones. I wonder what that cluster's all about. I'm guessing they're against it. And look at this, Handdrawn. They're for it. I wonder who they are. Canadian oil company. Wonder why. But you can see that the Canadian oil companies are in one cluster and the environmentalists are in another. And maybe there's an actionable point here. Environmentalists ought to follow the people they're opposed to and vice versa, but you can see the divisions in these organizations very visibly. So, network theory, lots of concepts there. There's some literature, there's a ton of it out there. There's also a book floating around. I don't know if anybody has the book, if you want to hold it up and see me afterwards to get copies of the book. This is NodeXL being used to analyze a not social media system. That picture represents the United States Senate in 2007. Such a long time ago. Some other guy was president, can't quite recall. If you look at which senators vote in agreement with which other senators more than 2/3 of the time, these two clusters emerge. And of course, those are left and right. You can use these tools then to make doing network analysis a lot easier. You don't have to learn how to program. You don't have to do the math. We'll do it for you, much the same way that a desktop publishing application is going to do what a typesetter would do for you. And so we've been automating the process. We do this entirely from start to finish, no human being involved. We can take a graph that looks kind of like this. This is people talking about Microsoft research. And without human involvement, we can make it look like that. We can sort of disentangle all of the muddy overlap that happens in a lot of social media. And so there's a paper out there about this. We're working on something that we call network motif simplification. This is the work of Cody Dunn, soon to be Dr. Cody Dunn from the University of Maryland, one of our contributors. And Cody has figured out a way to take the patterns that show up a lot in a network and remove them and simplify them. We call that motif simplification. So you can take that big graph and reduce it to that much smaller graph. We've put up the graph gallery where you can go and get graphs. If a lot of people will say, I can't get data, we provide that data. It is also a place for you to go and see what best practices are in terms of data analysis. And the book that's going around the room is co-authored with my colleagues. That's Derek Hansen, now no longer at the University of Maryland, he's now at Brigham Young, and Ben Schneiderman, who is still at the University of Maryland, my co-authors for this book, Analyzing Social Media Networks with NodeXL, which of course was the breakout bestseller that followed up this bestseller. This is at the airport, you'll find this everywhere, Communities in Cyberspace, with the now sadly departed Peter Kollick, my colleague. Let me give you an example of what a controversial topic would look like and why a network analysis would be helpful. This is people tweeting about the topic contraception or contraceptives last June, in early June, which was the 45th anniversary, interestingly, of Griswold versus Connecticut. Anybody remember Griswold versus Connecticut? Legalized contraception in the United States of America. Let that sink in for a moment. 45 years ago or more, it's illegal to use contraception. And Griswold, by the way, only legalized it for married women. It was only later that it became just legal. So this is a map of people talking about contraception or contraceptives in the 2 days around in June during the 45th anniversary. And what you can see are these two really big clusters, and the labels on top of them are going to tell you about the hashtags that are being used within them. And I'm going to go past some of the summary data to just say inside what we're going to see are there are these local patterns around individuals, like the hub, like the bridge, that tell us who are you in your community. So we can find the answer person. It's the person who has lots of connections to other people who are not connected to each other, who don't reply back. None of these arrows actually point back into that person. These people said, I can't print. What do I do? And this guy said, reinstall your print driver. So this is what an expert looks like, versus this person who is the person who actually engages in the discussion. Was that not the best episode of Downton Abbey last night or not? And then, you know, well, it's a matter of debate, right? Episode 5 was the best episode because, you know, Lady Sybil dies. So, you know, that means that people could debate it. There's a lot of conversation. This is the person who starts a conversation but does not participate in it. So these patterns are there to be found if you look for them. And when we look for them, what we went and did was we provide you with this content analysis. You get a spreadsheet in the document, and it tells you things like, here are the most frequent hashtags mentioned, most frequent URLs mentioned. And if you look at the hashtags mentioned, it'll say things like contraception, 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 teacup. Huh. Teacup. That's top conservatives on Twitter. What else are they talking about? This cluster is different. Well, the second one is pro-life, and then it's contraception, and then it's Tea Party, and pro-choice and abortion. So we could look into this graph, and we're going to see these are the people who don't like birth control. They are the third largest group. They're highly connected to themselves, but they've got almost no connection to anybody else in the graph. Why? Because all the other people like birth control. They don't want to talk to those people. And they don't. And they're sociologically isolated over there. And not only are they isolated, they use different language, different URLs, different hashtags, different words. And so you can really understand your community by saying, what language do you use? What URLs do you refer to? And how is that different from the people who you would imagine are talking about the same topic one cluster over? How are you different from your neighbors? So that's the interface. You get a ribbon in Excel. It's just another ribbon. It gives you all the tools you need to get data. There's the Get Me Some Data menu. Then it gives you a dialog box, and you might just fill this out and say, yeah, you know, I want all the tweets that say NodeXL, and I want to see how people follow each other and how they reply to each other and they mention each other. And you know what? If they don't do any of those things and it's just a tweet, I'll take that too. And so you'll get something like 1,000 to 1,500 tweets from Twitter, and then we will give them to you in a list. This is those this is the edge list. These are those tweets. This is a tweet. That's a mention. Somewhere in here we're going to see a follows, and so this person did that with this person, or in this case it's a mention. So this person said the name of The Atlantic. There's the tweet. Retweet The Atlantic. That made an edge from this person to that person at this date. We have a bunch of other metadata about the edge, and then we give you this list. This is the list of every unique person in your graph. They're known as vertices or nodes. And so that's going to list every person, and we're going to tell you things like, well, this is their degree. How many people are they connected to? Their out degree and their in degree. How many do they connect to versus connect back to them? So this is interesting. This person has lots of people connecting to them and connects out to only 3. So a big difference, 50-time difference in versus out degree. Then the centrality scores, and then things from Twitter, like how many followers and follows they've got.
All of that is available from the NodeXL graph page?
That's all available in the workbook that NodeXL generates for you. And then when you upload, it takes a summary of that data and makes it a caption. And I'll show you that in a moment, yeah. If you go to NodeXL Graph Gallery, you'll see sort of the thumbnail of the graph and then a detailed description about it. And at the bottom, you get the workbook. You also get it in GraphML for those who don't like workbooks. We also do this automation feature. Essentially, we'll do all of this for you. So while I'm standing here in a closet in Belmont are laptops that are saying, well, it's 15 minutes after the hour. It's time to do the OCTribe map. And they do. And they'll get the data, analyze the data, visualize the data, publish the data. It ends up as an email in my phone, or it goes to the Graph Gallery, or it goes to a customer. And so you could even set this up with an old PC laying around under a desk or in a closet. You can have these things cranking out maps and emailing you at 6:45 a.m. You wake up, bang, on your phone is the map of your hashtag every day. Yeah, isn't it? Yeah, it's kind of. So, the automation is really nice. We then calculate a bunch of graph metrics for you. We can filter the graph for you. There's the filtering stuff. And you do get some really neat data. Like this shows you, it's sort of like the, you know what a gas chromatograph is, or a spectrometer? You've got these little spikes at certain points. This is which time zone are my tweeters in? And that's the East Coast time zone. That means this is Europe, there's Asia, there's the West Coast, Hawaii's not really showing up. And so you can go, oh, that's an East Coast topic. But if I type in like Cyprus and Euro, I'm going to get a whole bunch of GMT 0 and +1 lines on there, and a lot less on GMT +8, that, you know, here in California. So you can get some insight into what is the geographic distribution of my population. You can also measure how clueful is my population. And by clueful, I mean how long ago did you get your first Twitter account? And so that spike here means that there was a clueful burst. These were all people in about 2007 to 2009 who all got the word and got on Twitter. And then these are the people who just heard that they really need to have a Twitter account. And so the shape of that distribution does tell you something about how much of an old-timer topic is this. I'll bet the OCTribe thing skews towards the old days, whereas something that just popped up is quite possibly going to skew towards the new days. So, and we'll also do summary statistics and draw you your graphs and so on. So with that, what I'd like to do is I'm going to show you the OCTribe map, and then I'd like to take requests if there are any. So here's Graph Gallery, and you can see quite a few different graphs there. There's OCTribe. I was just at a meeting where there was a lot of concern about sustainable seafood and sustainable fishing, so there's a map of that topic. NP Teach In was just over in Oakland. That's a nonprofit. That's the Kapor Foundation supporting people. It's a Mitch Kapor's foundation, Aspire Tech. They had an event, so I made their maps for them. Here's the map of the word big data. And you'll notice just by looking at these things, wow, these maps are often quite different. And then let's open, here, let's see if we can get, there we go, OCTribe. So this is you. And if you'd like, if you tweet, I'll make another map, and then you'll be on the map. So tweet OCTribe, and you'll be on the map. And what do we see? Well, we see things like TechSoup is right here, and TechSoup is well, Suze, you're the #1. Followed by TechSoup. So you actually outrank. Suze is the #1 most central person in the OCTribe graph, which, you know, there you go.
Make no mistake.
And then TechSoup, and then our Biega? Biega? Biega. So these are the names of the people at the center of your graph, which admittedly is it's a relatively small graph right now. Of course, right now, Twitter's going crazy, I'm sure. And so we'll make another one and we'll post that, and you'll see what was it like, you know, having had you all and whatever remote population we've got, what would the map look like after they've had their turn at it? We can look at other topics, some of which are, you know, potentially relevant here, like big data or OpenGov. Let's take a look at OpenGov. And who is the mayor of OpenGov? Oh, well, let's see. Find out. I'm sure it exists. No. There we go. Okay, so OpenGov, the mayor of OpenGov is Government Droid, Digifile, Sun Foundation, OpenGov Part, Knight Foundation, Open Sourceway, Cory Booker's on the list, the Open Knowledge Foundation, and so if you know the OpenGov world, this may be a pretty reasonable usual suspects list. These are people I think are reasonable, and they are there at that point in the list because they're at the center of these clusters. They're in the middle. And so key observation, not that they tweeted the most, not that they had the most followers, that they were situated within this web of relationships in the most unique place. And by unique, that means they connected to people that other people did not connect to. They're the bridge. So these maps, I think, especially when used in a comparative framework, really start to tell you a story. What's my hashtag look like? Which one do I resemble? Which one do I want to be? How close am I getting? And I think that's one of the main ways that network theory can be useful to the community manager. It could be a a graph of who replies to who. If it is a traditional message board, we have importers for Live World, but other message boards are easy to import. It could be a Facebook group or a fan page. It could be a Flickr tag or a stream, Twitter, email, all of these things. They're all repositories of graphs. Yes. Yes. I mean, all of these systems, and back to the shopping mall comment, all of these systems impose all sorts of restrictions on what you can and cannot do. And in just the same way that in a shopping mall, if I were to carry a sign saying, I advocate for anything, I will be out of the shopping mall in a very short amount of time, right? I mean, try carrying a sign that says, I'm for good. I'm sorry, too partisan. You can't carry a sign in a shopping mall advocating anything. You may not hand out any literature. You may not even wear a T-shirt that is particularly politically provocative. You don't have rights there. In the same way that Facebook decides what they will and will not give us. And we don't have any right. Even if you thought, well, the interaction that happened there was public, you did it in a shopping mall. So, but yes, we do Facebook fan pages, groups, and EgoNets. If you are the ego, you get your graph. You can't see other people's graph without their permission.
It looks like we have some questions on the Ustream.
Oh, great.
Zach, do you want me to go to the Ustream to read them? Or? Yeah. Okay. You keep talking and I'll go to the Ustream. Give me a second.
Okay, sure.
Yep.
Send us your questions, Twitter people.
Yeah.
Maybe there are local questions. People who are actually physically in the room might want to ask a question.
That's true.
Maybe. Yes,
yes.
sir.
Here, do you want to take the mic? And
I'll carry it over to him.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark. One of the things that I've been playing with some of this, not with NodeXL, but with Gelfi and some of the others, and what I'm curious about is time. This is a snapshot. Are there ways to look at this over time? So
yes.
30 years ago, not 30 years ago, but last year versus this year for Obama versus Romney or something like that. How does that graph change?
Right. So the answer is essentially flip movie or repeated data collection. And so because this has an automation feature, I'm taking a snapshot of, let's say, Obama and a whole bunch of modifying keywords. So if you say the word Obama and Benghazi, for example, I've got that map. I have the My2K map every day now since November 28th. And so when you look at the maps over time, you are seeing the evolution of the graph. The feature itself does have some support for that. There is that time slider I showed you in the dynamic filters allows you to say, let me just see the Tuesday edges. Okay, let me look at the Wednesday edges. How did that change? Or you could have all the data in one workbook and another slice of data in another and then compare the two workbooks. We have a feature that will take any folder filled with workbooks, open them each one after another, grab their summary statistics and build a new worksheet, which is the summary of all of your other workbooks. If those workbooks are, for example, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, you're then getting a time series analysis of your graph. And we call that feature the aggregate overall metrics feature. So, but time, we like to say, is of the essence, and animation is really what I think you'd like, which is a little bit more involved. And we've just released a feature that is the first step towards animation, and we expect that the play button will be added to the interface in probably sometime in the early fall, so that you can say, here's the resolution, from Monday to Friday by hour go, and have it just sort of go through that animation for you. It can be done with the tool right now. There's a very dedicated former graduate student named Brian Keegan who did 100 slices of the evolution of the Sendai Wikipedia page. So he looks at breaking news topics on media wikis and looked at what happened when the Sendai earthquake, the 3/11 quake 2 years ago, took place. And of course the page dramatically changes over the next 24 hours, 48 hours. It's a lot of activity. And he did every hour for an hour for 100 hours with NodeXL. It was very painful. And so we're trying to save him from himself and automate that. So that's coming, can be done, some limited support for it, more coming in the future. Yes, things like Sienna, but Sienna has a command line interface. Yeah, so in terms of pie chart making tools, not so much. And so that's one of the reasons why we're going to bother to do it. We think it would be an innovation to let the pie chart makers amongst us, myself included, to get to dynamic network analysis without actually learning to code, which, I'm sure that there are computer scientists who are saying, no, let them learn how to code. And it's like, yeah, but you've had 40 years trying to get people to learn how to code. They're not learning how to code. So I can't hold my breath anymore. Yeah. Other questions?
Yeah, two from online. One of them is an example of commercial versus nonprofit. Wanted to see a for-profit one.
Okay.
And second question is any examples of leveraging that metadata that you're finding. And I kind of want to build on that question, which is basically examples of not only leveraging the metadata, but leveraging the adjacent communities.
That's a very good point, yeah.
And I don't know if anybody can hear me online because you're saying you're not. Oh, it's okay on the sound. Okay.
Okay, so this is a commercial graph. So Travel Weekly is an industry publication. Travel Weekly talks about, of course, the travel world. So here's what it looks like when you've got a commercial product. There are lots of other examples in Graph Gallery. This just happens to be on the front page. If you are Travel Weekly, the same as if you were a nonprofit, you kind of want to know who are my key people, and Travel Weekly is its key person, but there are these others. It wants to know who those people are and have relationships with them. This is interesting because it tells you what URLs are actually getting mentioned, and it looks like Travel Weekly gets itself mentioned, so all of the content is actually from that source. But we could do this for lots of different topics, and brands, events, conferences, political candidates, legislation, really pretty much anything that people talk about in Twitter or on other social media repositories, you can make that map. Now, Susan's question, I think, is a really interesting one. A lot of people want to know, how do I find more followers or more supporters? How do I expand my audience? And the maps help, largely by saying, what are the topics that are neighbor to your topic? I'll give you an example. I had a client who is a health advocacy organization, wants to improve health in the United States, is trying to avoid the diabetes bomb that is slowly exploding across America. And their goal is to shape municipal policy to increase the funding for playgrounds, bike lanes, and just stuff that you could go outside and not be eating a donut. So their interest was to get their advocacy documents visible, and they weren't. They weren't that visible. People ignored these documents. And so we went off and we looked for neighboring topics, possible allies. So if you care about health, it turns out that words like recess counts, it's a hashtag. Recess counts is the phrase that people who don't want schools to take away recess in the name of better education. Oh, the kids need more classroom time. Yeah, but if you're 8, you also need to run around screaming. And if you do not run around, eventually you're going to gain weight. And so that could be a problem. And so recess counts was a neighboring hashtag that was ideologically aligned with this healthcare advocacy organization. Other examples, food desert, playground, bike lane. If you know who the mayor of Bike Lane is, if you follow that person, there's a good chance they're going to follow you back. If you then tweet, guess what? We've got this report about health and activity and how the country should be different. You now have a potential audience, and it's not just anybody.
So the answer is really just to look at who the influencers are of neighboring hashtags.
Yes. Yeah. And then build a relationship with them. Right. Yeah, ma'am.
But what about, that makes sense.
Oh, can you,
Let's get you a microphone.
yeah, exactly. Just so that people who are watching on because they can't hear and just hear.
So it is regarding what you just said. That sounds like something really easy to do when the neighboring hashtags have are supportive, or are kind of like a domino effect when you throw a tile, all the tiles will follow you or something like that. But what about if you have something a little more separated and not as integrated? I don't know, for instance, we're experiencing that, trying to bring together several different communities of developers, and sometimes they're like a little bit like the example you had, right? Like there are
Separate
two
groups,
extremes,
right?
and it's not too easy to. Maybe the neighbor hashtag is like maybe an opposite or a contradiction.
Right.
So how do you use this?
So how do you find the neighbors who are actually friendly neighbors?
Or that will have that effect, because I think that for some topics that aren't like, as you said, like I don't know, like diabetes and all that, will have like more support coming from neighborhood tags than others that don't have as much like traction, if you put it that way.
Right. So one way to do that is, so here we are live in the tool. This is the map of the word community manager. We can see that there are separate clusters here. They're talking about things a little bit differently from one another, and we can drill into that a little bit more clearly by coming over here. I'm going to pull the display apart and click on this tab. It says Twitter Search Network Top Items. This is a worksheet that you get in the workbook. And it's going to tell you, here are the top URLs, here are the domains, here are the hashtags, here are the words, word pairs, and people that got talked about a lot. And so what I would recommend is coming here and looking at hashtags and saying, well, if you're looking for the allies of community managers, who are those people? Well, maybe it's the social media people. That's a possibility. Or the E2O people. Well, actually, those are neighbors, right? And so you would then make the maps for these things, or here's brand online communities and CM story. So you might look at the hashtags of the first group and say, oh, there are related groups. Let's go look at those related groups. Okay, we're going to go and look at E2O. We're going to find out who the mayor of that is. E2O is no doubt going to have its own set of hashtags associated with it, one of which may be community manager, but there's going to be others. And so a snowball sample begins. We're starting to roll out from the target to related hashtags. Will you always find an ally there? Will you sometimes find an opponent? Yes. The more polarizing your topic, you just try to get people to agree with you when you're talking about tax cut or sequester. I mean, I can show you the sequester map. It's, it's two sides of... Sure, we can do that right now. Okay, yeah, sure. I'll show you how you do it. Yeah, so here we... Yeah. Find the opponents. Yeah, so here I'm going to put, so the point made was finding your opponents can also be valuable. And I will now upload this.
No, hello.
Okay, and I'm going to put that down for a second. Hold on.
This is actually, while he's doing this, I'll take the time to, this is a good way to build a community from the ground up. I'm having to do that for Caravan Studios, our new division, and this is how I'm doing it without the network map. So once I get the network map, it'll even be better. But I'm doing it kind of just by listening to hashtags. I'm doing it in the manual, slow way, but listening to hashtags, finding when somebody, like for example, if they tweet OCTribe and then CMGR as an example, I'm finding the adjacent hashtags just by when people are tweeting with multiple hashtags. I find somebody, like I find the influencers via a listening dashboard, and then that's how I find more influencers. So it's the same philosophy, but this is the more scientific, less time-consuming way to do it.
So the C Manager map has now just published to Graph Gallery. So if you are on Graph Gallery and you look there, you'll see it's now at the top of that list.
Blogger Crystal is going to be blogging this whole thing with all these wonderful links. So that'll be on the TechSoup blog, and we will post the link to the Meetup group.
There it is.
All get this.
So there's community. That's just CMGR. So yeah, making the maps of your neighbors will tell you who their mayor is, and then you do mayoral relationships. It can be that you're going to identify your opponents. Certainly, if we look for something like, let's go look at sequester, you're going to see some pretty polarized topics when we talk about sequester. Let's see if we can find the sequester map. There's entitlements, there's federal debt. This is interesting. This is Progressives 2.0. Here's sequester. Progressives 2.0, of course, is the left-leaning hashtag, but you're always going to get TCOT people who like to throw rocks at them. But then again, if you look at the TCOT map, you're always going to find a group of P2 people who like to throw rocks at the TCOT people, which, you should stop that. Don't do that. It's not nice. If you don't agree, just say nothing. But if you look at sequester, you do get some insight into, this is the TCOT group. These people are talking about Unite Blue, Stop the Sequester. What are their links? What are they looking at? And often when you go down this list, what will happen is all of a sudden one group is all linking to Breitbart and Daily Caller. Not so much here, but when we look at some of the ones, let's say like federal debt, that might be a good example, where you really very quickly see who the people from each side of the aisle are, because they don't read the same newspapers. They don't even speak the same language. I've never seen a right-leaning person post a link to whitehouse.gov or npr.org, and I've never seen a blue person link to Daily Caller, Breitbart, or Fox News. A house divided against itself apparently has structural problems that require a contractor. It's a problem. I look at these maps and I think we really need to talk to each other. Because that might be the most radical thing any American can do, is to talk to somebody they disagree with. So there is some insight to be gotten from the maps that I think help us along and guide us. Like any map, if you look at how we use the old kind of maps, the terrain maps, sometimes you use it to identify a location, a destination. I want to go to a big city in Europe. Oh, look, Paris. The map kind of points you to the big cities. Or, how do you get there? That's a second type of application of a map. How do I route from my current to my desired destination? Both of those kinds of applications can be done with these maps as well. Who do I want to engage with? How do I get to that person? Maybe the route in this case is I need to friend or connect to people that are the intervening people. Or maybe I should just start to adopt the language that you're using, the language that I can see in my content report. Maybe, for example, discovering the hashtag that is the banner under which a whole group of people are marching. You didn't even know that they were there. You didn't know their hashtag. You didn't know they existed. And now you can discover the hashtag, make the map, identify their mayor, and engage. So, networks. It's a network society. We should have a network tool. I know we're in the network. We're on the network. I'd like to see the network. I'd like network data structures to be part of your vocabulary, part of your language, because it is the world we live in. We live in a networked world. Even before Facebook, we were living in a networked world. Before there was electricity, we were living in a networked world. It's one of our specialties as animals on this planet. We're the networkers. We are the social animals. We're really good at this connecting to people thing, but I think we have an opportunity to take it to the next level. We can now really think empirically about our networks rather than metaphorically. So with that, oh, there's questions. Oh, even more questions. I won't stop. Let's go to the physical people for. Well, let's start there. You've got the mic.
Hi, how are you? The thing is that very interesting everything you said, but I have I'm involved in a community online. There is writers that was especially in Venezuela, all Spanish writers. But we don't have we don't pursue, we don't earn money. We just are online for people to publish when nobody can publish. If they don't get in the newspaper or they don't get a book, they can publish in this page. So we humility, we have 3,000 visits a day. So one of the problems I have is that we invite the people to come and write, but they don't come because they're afraid to be exposed. That is one. And the other one is the trolls. You know trolls?
Oh yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because we are free. We don't have editors. We don't have censorship. You just have to open your account and just publish whatever you want to publish. So trolls come all along,
sure,
all the time. And the other thing we have is that we are trying to get it more poetic and artistic, and people to come, like writers, because this is a place to writers to get better, to affront an audience. It's a small, but to begin, and then go on. And they feel like maybe it's too dangerous to go there, or it's not worth it. So that is my problem. We don't have any money. I mean, the founder of the page just pay for the hosting every year. We don't have publicity. We don't have anything. We just work for people that write. We would like everybody to come from English, Spanish, Portuguese, every language, but only Spanish come because it's a community in Spanish. But we would like more people to come, and more about art and more about poets and whatever. Exactly. In this case.
But maybe not vocal? Is that who are engaged but not vocal?
Exactly. How do we get to the I don't know, these people to get involved, the writers, and to target better? Maybe.
It's a good question. When you are trying to generate communities in political regimes where there are issues with safety, the landscape changes, right? So, you know, asking people to actually engage in an activity that could cause them harm is, you know, it's a complicated issue. Sometimes you have to do that if you're going to have change. Sometimes that's a very dangerous thing to encourage people to do before the change is really ready. I'll point you briefly to the work of Katie Pierce, who is a professor of communications at the University of Washington. She's been making really great use of NodeXL. She is an Azerbaijan specialist. Azerbaijan, Caucasus region country, military dictatorship, no civil liberties. Protest Baku, the capital city of Azerbaijan, that's the Protest Baku hashtag. Katie is very carefully studying the Protest Baku hashtag using NodeXL, understanding what's happening, and she's done a few things that I think are useful for a society that does not actually have civil liberties. For example, when the government, in the face of Protest Baku, the hashtag, decided to bring in what some people call eggs. Are you familiar with this phrase, the eggs? Eggs are Twitter accounts so new that nobody's put up a profile photo yet. So you get the little egg. And suddenly 25 eggs show up, and they're all saying, you know, the government's not so bad. And, you know, these protesters, they're not really patriots. Katie uses the tool, identifies that they're all connected to each other, and they all have the same create date within the same 4 or 5 minutes of creation time. And she publishes these blog posts that are actually being read in Azerbaijan, saying, you notice, if you're listening to the tweet stream, you may be hearing some pro-government tweets. They're all AstroTurf. Okay. The tool allowed her to see the AstroTurf. Okay, so in a despotic regime, this is, I mean, Katie's in Seattle. She's not on the ground in a place where she could get hurt. And so, you know, to the Azerbaijanis, I would say, be careful what you tweet. But of course, Katie Pierce's work is such that she's making it very visible to the protesters. This is what people could see, and I'm sure the Azerbaijani government has bought their version of this a long time ago. Mine's free, but that's, you know, you can buy it. So I guess there are a lot of issues in more well, less free regimes. It's just a serious issue. But you can use the tool to grow your population usually by using the neighbor snowball sample kind of mechanism. Find the people who are near you. And if you want to get people to create content, make that content, make them famous, and get taken out to dinner. If there's no money, at least there's dinner. And fame. You know, I found that people will do more for pixels than they will for pennies. So give them fame. Yeah. And if you were here in January, you would have heard the great work of Randy Farmer, who would have said, I can deal with your trolls. And the way you deal with the trolls is with a reputation system. And you let people say, this is a troll. And then you let people subscribe to other people's definitions of trolls. And then the trolls will disappear. Or at least they will no longer be a problem to the people who are subject to them. Yeah. So Randy Farmer's work, definitely worth looking up on that topic. And before we go to the virtual, let me go to the physical. Is there another question here? And can I get a microphone to you? I'll repeat his question. It's okay. Go ahead. EC2 instances, VMware. Good point. How do I make NodeXL work on my Mac? And the answer is virtual machines. Yeah. I am delighted to implement the Mac version. All I need is a dev for a year. Come, build the Mac version, please. But we're not there yet. And to be honest, let me show you where we're going rather than that. This is Graph Gallery, and this is our new, very early days, but this is the web-based, zoomable, graphical interface. I think we're going to take a pass on the Mac desktop, and we're going to take a pass on all other desktops too. And we're going to go straight to the web. So Windows desktop for now, web more and more over time. Probably never get to a different desktop. Yeah. Other questions and maybe some virtual ones?
Yeah, I'll read a virtual one from Ruben Metcalf, who's been on the Ustream the whole time and tweeting and commenting. Okay. Ruben's question was, any predictions for consumer behavior shift based on the extrapolations of this data and trending? That's a really good question.
Okay, so can I predict what you might do based on where you are in the graph? I think so. I mean, the political stuff makes it pretty clear. You know, which cluster you're in pretty much tells me which kind of politics you have. So that's easy, and I'm trying to sell you a product there, right? I've got a bunch of candidates I'd like you to buy. So I do think you can see that. You can also see it in, let's say, other kinds of factionalized topics like programming languages. They tend to factionalize. So yeah, I can tell what kind of technologies you're interested in. I can tell what you're more likely to buy. I certainly have experienced my own dose of, shall we say, corporate racism. You know, I used to work for Microsoft. People were often very rude about my employer. Now it's just misguided. You should be mean to the Google people. How could you kill alerts? What were you thinking? Yeah, I think you can look at somebody's, let's say, technology participation profile and know which technology are they likely to buy. And so I can tell when you are what we often refer to as an ABM person, anybody but Microsoft. Yeah. You know, you could tell when you were an ABM person. And you could tell when you were actually, in our camp. So yes, I can probably tell what kind of products you're going to want to buy by looking at who you follow and what you're tweeting about. I do agree. Yeah. Other questions? We have a couple of points to make, I guess. Thursdays, 10 a.m. Pacific time in Google Hangouts. It's the weekly NodeXL office hours. Every Thursday, 10 to noon Pacific time. You'll find me and a little camera, and it's whatever you want it to be. It's 2 hours devoted to NodeXL users. You come with data, come with questions, come with problems. We will just simply troubleshoot your issue. 10 to noon, Thursday, Google Hangout. I usually tweet about it. Pacific time. That's right, Pacific time. I usually tweet about it about a half an hour before the event. So 10 a.m. Otherwise, the message board has the distribution site is at nodexl.codeplex.com. Here's our distribution site. There's the page for getting NodeXL. And you'll see that we've got a discussion tab here. Typically, no more than 24 hours. Sometimes it's 2 days if you hit us on a holiday weekend. But free tool and free support. We're happy to take a donation, but that doesn't happen often. And so we are doing technical support on the web, and we do it in person, at least remotely, in office hours. And of course, we're happy to take your emails and requests as well. The tool is hardly finished. You will see releases typically on the order of once a month. We are about to release version 236. We've been around for 6.5 years. And so we're agile. We release early and often. And we thank you all for being our very, very capable testers. So yeah, the tool's out there. You can find it at nodexl.codeplex.com. You can find the graph gallery at nodexlgraphgallery.org. Also, do come and visit us at the smrfoundation.org site, the Social Media Research Foundation, and in particular, do come and visit all of the very, very clever people who have joined us here in the About Us tab. You'll see many of their smiling faces listed there.
And you will be at the online community meetup, unconference in May? Probably. No, you won't. Oh, right.
Yeah,
I forgot you had traveled.
Well, the date doesn't work
saw
for me.
that, yeah.
I'm going to San Diego. I'll be at the Collaboration Technologies and Systems Conference.
Sorry. Well, the blog will be recapped by Crystal. It'll be posted to the list. We have an April meetup featuring NetBase, and I'll write a little bit more about that. May, there is no meetup because we're all going to be together at the unconference is the idea. Anything else to say for you? Any other links
Thank
to
you.
send? Yes.
Thank
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for coming. Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks to everybody in Twitterland.